So we are really pleased to have Jenn Hill with us tonight as our speaker. Most recently, we've known Jenn as the Marquette City Commissioner and the Mayor Pro Tem, and just yesterday re-elected to the City Commission. But we might not know that Jenn was born in Illinois, but she was a summer Upper all her childhood. She became a third-generation UP fisherwoman. She earned her master's in city planning at MIT in 1995, focusing on sustainability planning. She and her husband became Marquette citizens in 2014, I think that's right. Jenn served for 2 years on the Governor's UP Energy Task Force and will be presenting the task force conclusions tonight. Please welcome Jenn Hill.
This is so fun. This is the first time I've gotten to talk to real people in 2 years. Right? I've been doing this on Zoom, so thank you all for being here. Thank you for wearing your masks. Let's all be safe. And yes, I moved up here thinking I was going to work on water issues. You know, Lake Superior is right there. And it turns out we have a pretty complicated and interesting energy situation in the UP that really mimics and mirrors a lot of what's going on across the entire country. So I have dove into that to the point where I now work for a company called 5 Lakes Energy. It's a B3 corporation, so it has a triple bottom line, and we work on water policy and energy policy. So how much time do we have here? Someone, when your meeting's in?
Sorry.
Sorry?
7:30.
Oh, okay, we won't go that long. So the way I've structured this is I have sort of 15 basic content slides. We're going to start with some big picture stuff about how our energy system works. And then I've got the details of the recommendations, and we were a pretty big committee and we had 18 recommendations. So I'm ready to dive into any of them, whatever you guys are interested in. So I have sort of background slides on a bunch of different stuff. But just to know the structure is we're going to have some open, I'm going to give you some just big ideas about how energy works, and then we'll dive into those recommendations. So I like to open with this slide because the energy system of the United States is actually fundamentally based on parts of the Upper Peninsula, because of course the copper to electrify America came from here. Talk about land acknowledgement. This is my land acknowledgement. So this image is from the historical record of Isle Royal. This is a hammerstone open pit in the Chenobek gravel or mining site. I'm sorry. So this is how they would, when the copper was still available on the ground, this is what they would look like. This is from the early 1900s. That's online on the Isle Royal website. So, you know, we humans have been playing around with the metals here on the ground and here in the UP for quite some time. So, of course, that's Quincy Mine, the workers at lunch in Hancock. And then this is the dam at Crystal Falls. It is still in operation. This is from this image. You see there's a truck here. This is from 1921. This dam is still generating hydroelectric power today. It's one of the oldest ones in the Upper Peninsula. So our land, extracting from the land, has literally made our whole energy system possible. Next slide, please. So, and I've got, here's a aside, but I could not find a picture with both power plants in the image. It was funny. So I did the best I could, but you know, here's the We Energies plant, right, and then the Shiras plant. And we had them for basically 100 years. We ran on coal, kept us warm, cooked our food, heated our water. But in 6 years' time, we went from being utterly dependent on them to tearing them down. Just in the last 6 years, 2015, and they would have actually done it in 2020, but with COVID. So basically in 5 years' time, we completely changed our fuel source. And that's a the idea that our actual energy system is changing and changing pretty rapidly, considering the size and the amount of money and things that we're dealing with here, and you know, the huge amounts of coal. Another thing I've learned when I was getting to be a city commissioner, every time a coal barge came into Cyrus, $1.1 million is how much one coal barge cost. And do you know where our coal came from? Primarily it's actually from Wyoming. So out of the ground in Wyoming, onto a train, and if you've ever been out there, you've seen those mile-long coal trains, to Duluth, onto a boat, then to here. So we were staying warm thanks to Wyoming, fundamentally. Some amount of West Virginia coal. There are actually two different kinds of coal. That's another story. So we were relying on that whole chain of things to keep us warm. So what happened and what's next? That's what I'm going to hopefully help you understand today. Next slide. So this was taught to me at my very first meeting at Michigan Tech in 2014, when we were going to potentially owe, we being the whole entire UP, we're going to owe approximately $100 million to the We Energy system because of what it would mean to turn off the Presque Isle power plant. That didn't happen. It's a very strange story. Unfortunately, I know how. You don't need to know. I can tell you what you don't want to know. But I was sitting in Michigan Tech, and I'm hearing these huge numbers, and people were concerned. I mean, I was in a room of like 40 people who were worried about what was going to happen. And the guy says, yeah, you got to know that there's 3 poles, and none of them can trump the other. There's the physics of just moving electricity, moving electrons, burning things, solar radiation, wind. There's a basic physics there. And then there's how we decide the resources flow. So who owns what? How do you pay for it? Do you pay for it monthly? Do you pay for it all in advance? How do you buy a furnace? That's the business model, the business flows. And then there's politics of who is actually deciding then what the rules are, right? And so each one of those things are going to pull, next slide. So this I felt was actually a little more accurate, unfortunately, where you've got the 3-legged stool, right? And then here's the customer, but if things kind of get out of whack, then the customer is the one that ends up suffering, right? So we've had different points in time where things can be really cheap. Right now, natural gas is really cheap. My electric bill my gas bill was like $25 last month, right? Because it's so warm. And so it's not that we're trying to build something that's always going to be balanced. That's unrealistic. But at the same time, you don't want to have things going off in these directions because part of the system is gonna break or pull back, and you're going to have that kind of push-pull. So as we think about then what the options are you're about to hear about, they're all going to be sort of stuck inside this physics, business, politics piece. Next slide. So back up to the big picture. This is our grid. So you remember, poor Texas, right, last February, how they were isolated. We are not isolated. We are part of something called the Mid-Continent Independent Service Operators. It is literally a nonprofit 501c3 organization, headquarters in Indiana and Minnesota. And they basically run an auction where all the power plants are saying, well, this is how much it costs me to generate electricity. And then they buy off of that auction onto the transmission wires. Very rough, but it's basically an auction house. And that auction makes it a little more fair, right? Because they choose what the price is, and they know what their prices are, and we just go off. And then you can, so we're in zone 2 in the UP. We are not connected to Lower Michigan. except for one very small line. Our primary connections are all there in the eastern, Wisconsin, Green Bay, Milwaukee, Madison. So anything that's going on in our zone, we're bidding and the energy is going in and out of that system. And then that's true for each one of those little subunits, and then also true within the whole thing itself. And this is both the historical oddity of just the way things developed in the early 1900s and the fights between Edison and Westinghouse and Tesla and all that. There's some pretty fun like PBS videos and movies and stuff about this stuff. It's pretty interesting getting all that going. But the funniest thing to me is, you see how the top of Chicago is white?
Yeah.
Or top of Illinois, including Chicago, is white. And then that little bit of Michigan. And then they're actually part of a system that goes all the way to Baltimore. Just again, just the history. So it's a complicated, crazy mess. Yes, sir?
Does the physics part of the school, does it allow, I'm sure it doesn't happen very often, but could the physics allow electricity to come from, say, Louisiana up to us? Could that actually happen?
Technically, yes, actually, fundamentally, yes. We can build wires that have enough of the alternating current to actually move stuff thousands of miles. We can and we do. We are going to be receiving, and you're going to see this in a second, we receive power from Minnesota. It does cross the boundaries. And that's those giant power lines when you're driving down the interstate and you can hear them hum, and they're incredibly dangerous. And yeah, they're in terms of electricity, actually touching the wires, but yeah, moving around that power is really fun. So, so it's managed by a nonprofit. It's an auction, and we are in Zone 2. So, next slide, please. So, where does our power come from right now? I confess I was a little bit quick in that. So this is the whole MISO footprint. I didn't burrow down to Zone 2 because it's really easy to find the whole footprint. So the mix, this is as of 12:30 this afternoon. It is measured in real time. This auction, again, is happening in incredibly fast increments. So I pulled this down at 12:30 this afternoon. 41% coal, 36% natural gas, 16% nuclear, 14% wind, 1% other, hydro, some other things, 1% solar. That was this afternoon. And you can go on that website, and it's always there. It's an amazing testament to what we can do when we connect things for that whole region. Yeah, amazing. So, how am I doing? Just good? Okay. Next slide, please. So this is what's coming. This is also real time. They update this once a day. And I last gave this talk in May online, and you'll see, I was blown away. I had no idea that solar had almost doubled in 6 months. I mean, I always knew it was always the biggest number, but it doubled in 6 months. And then the other thing that's just crazy is the battery number. We're talking about the industrial size batteries that are the size of this room, has doubled in 6 months. This is business and industry deciding what's coming next. This is not subsidized. This is not. There's some policies that are pushing some of this in the government at the federal and state and local level, but mostly it's because this is what's going to be cheaper in the future. And why did those power plants come down as fast as they did? Because it's really expensive to bring something from Wyoming and put it on a train and put it on a boat and get it over. And we did it because we kind of had to, right? That was the best technology we had at the time. Best available technology. You hear a lot of that when you get into these technical fields. What's the best available technology at the time? This is now our best available technology. And again, I can't, this is businesses deciding, this is how I'm going to make money.
These are projects in construction right now?
So they're proposed.
Purple.
And honestly, not all of these are gonna be built.
Oh,
Yeah, they're not. There's also some of that, remember, it's an auction, there's some jockeying going on, there's some, I'm gonna do this, and so that you can't do that. That is also going on in some of this stuff. But as we look at moving away from fossil fuels, this is what's going to be coming to replace it. This,
So when we look at cheaper sources of running our systems,
yeah.
have we looked at the kind of things that, you know, solar fields are not very pretty. They take up a lot of land. Wind turbines, you know, in the Garden Peninsula, the farmers bought these wind turbines,
Right.
and they have a 25-year lifespan. And for a little bit of money, when these wind turbines burn up.
Well, they don't burn. That's not real. That video is not real.
Oh, okay.
But we're going to talk about that when I get to the recommendations. We'll talk about how the options are. Because again, the technology is changing so fast that what the options are, and like the turbines that went in at Garden Peninsula, which are now 10 years old, are Model T compared to the Tesla of today, literally, in terms of what turbines can do. So and we're going to get to that, but this is the context within which, as we were making these recommendations, this is what's going on all around us at that time. Yeah.
Is the battery water power?
No, the batteries are, there are two solar projects, or excuse me, two hydro projects, hydro dams that are blue that are in here, that also, as well as the blue is natural gas. Then the batteries, that's another place. So there's a lithium ion, which is what we have in our phones, but then there's salt, there's molten salt, there's other uses of hydrogen, there's other uses of sodium. Again, that's something, when you get into the industrial size that we're talking about, you can start using other chemicals in other ways. So that's also another place that things are exploding. Like if you know that line in that movie about plastics, right, from the graduate, the word I would tell a college student today would be batteries. Batteries are, when you think everything has a battery in it now, right? Everything. That's really, and that technology is not done. Like, people are doing all kinds of crazy things with that. Next slide. Oh, yeah, I forgot. So this is just zooming in on us. So just real quick, there's 2 wind proposed up south of Houghton, solar projects. There is a natural gas facility proposed between Brimley and Sault Ste. Marie. And then, lots and lots of solar, more wind, more batteries. So, switching over to the UP Energy Task Force, and wow, that's really dark. I can't read without my glasses. I was going to read it our purposes. So in the face of all these changes happening, in the face of the potential of that $100 million that we were going to have to pay the energies for about a hot couple of months, and in the face of what may or may not happen with the changes in our propane system up here, i.e. Line 5. So the governor appointed a commission, or a committee, assess the UP's overall energy needs and how they are currently being met, formulate alternative solutions, plural, for meeting the UP's energy needs with a focus on security, reliability, affordability, and environmental soundness. identify and evaluate potential changes that could occur to energy supply and distribution in the UP, the economic, environmental, and other impacts of such changes, and the alternatives for meeting the UP's energy needs in response to such changes. So that was the creation of this. This is us at Finlandia. This is us at Lake State. We literally were, until COVID, we're traveling. Our first meeting was June of 2019. So we got to do some bopping around, which was really fun, I have to say. And then we all shut down and everything was on Zoom for the rest of it. Literally my last meeting was down at Hannahville Casino on March 18th. That's where we were. We had our meeting and then I came home and didn't go anywhere. So, and we had, next slide. Oh, that's right. So, a little more context setting. Of course, in 2013, 2014, we had the polar vortex, and we had the incredible spike. I mean, that line is straight up, right, of propane prices. And you'll notice that it took a little while to go down, right? It didn't go down as fast as it came up. And this is 2012 prices, and then 2013, 2014 prices, right? That was certainly a big wake-up call. What is going on? How do we address this? This truly was a crisis. And one of our task force members was Major General Rogers. He is the leader of the National Guard of Michigan, born and raised Calumet, Michigan Tech grad, knows UP. And that was one of my favorite moments. He literally points at the piece of paper. So who made all that money? So remember the business part. There's the business part too. So next slide, please. So this is who we heard from. So the actual regulators of our energy system, the Pipeline Safety Advisory Board, and the Michigan Agency for Energy, Michigan Tech, the Propane Gas Association, the company that actually owns the liquid that flows inside the pipeline. Enbridge owns the pipeline. The company that owns what's inside the pipeline is this company. I didn't know that until I was on the task force. It's owned by a Canadian company. It's coming out of the ground in Alberta and then put in the pipe. And Semco, which is our local gas company. The low-income assistance programs, of which there are many. The Attorney General's Office regarding consumer protections. The low-income, again, and then the Federal Energy Information is, we have just like we have the census, right, for people numbers, the Energy Information Administration is a body that just collects all the data about our energy system. It's very well respected. They have a winter fuels report that comes out every Wednesday during winter. So it's just a huge wealth of information. Heard from all these folks. Next slide. Okay, so diving in. So we did propane first. Then we did the whole energy system. A little backwards, which we admitted, but there's a lot of concern about propane and what's gonna happen. So, having heard from all those folks, we said, actually skip ahead to the next slide. So this is a slide that was presented by, that's really small, but it's Plains Midstream. So the people who actually own, again, what's inside Line 5. This is 2010. And the last number there is 2019. Okay, so roughly January and July 2010. So every 6 months. And you'll see we had the 2013-14 vortex, thank you. And the storage was increased in the Upper Peninsula. Because if it's here to begin with, then if it gets colder, we don't have to worry about, is it on a truck, is it on a pipe, is it on a train to get here. So this was the industry's response to the vortex, was to go from 2 million barrels, roughly, to almost 4 million barrels already here. Right, your best insurance is money in the bank, propane in the tank, that it was already here. So now we can go. So storage was the, we were worried about this. Just, can we get people to make sure, fill up your tank in the summer? How can we get more up here? Can we help the retail guys? Can we subsidize them getting another one of those giant tanks so that they have the supply up here that we can get in the summertime? Like that was, heard a lot about that. And then Attorney General, Consumer Protection, when that price spike happened, it turns out the company that made all the money was the wholesaler and not the retailer. In other words, plain to a stream, but not the guy who comes and fills up your tank. He's happened to pay the guy that he had to go get the supply from. Now, it wasn't just plain Smooth Stream. It was a much more complicated situation that included having 2 pipelines shut down and a bad growing season in the entire Midwest from Kansas to Iowa to Minnesota that caused part of the 2013 conflict. But anyway, it came to light on the consumer protection that there was no way to go to the wholesale level within the way that our consumer protection laws are written. They're usually written that you're getting gouged by the guy you buy it from, and it needed to be kicked up and rewritten in another way. So that is one piece. And then the low-income heating assistance programs are a classic example of you solve one problem, but then you've created a different one, and the biggest problem is that your house leaks heat. Who's going to pay to fix the roof? And is that up to the gas company, the electric company, the local, the problem of fixing somebody's roof is become a really, and there's a lot of people trying to untangle that because the federal money says you can spend the money this way, but you can't touch the roof. And there's state money that says you can spend the money over here, but you can't touch the roof. And so it's one of those classic things where programs were piled on top of each other. So they're working on it. And many people recognize what a problem it is. It's going to take eventually, unfortunately, federal legislation to untie some of that money, and hopefully we'll get there. The other interesting idea, sort of like having the storage, is that what if the state bulk purchased and then the low-income housing folks could pull out of that state reserve and create a reserve of energy that folks could then draw from rather than having to buy on the spot market. Because what ends up happening is because they're having to buy when they're in crisis, when they've run out, prices are higher. Prices are higher in the wintertime than they are in the summertime. So let's have a reserve program that then could be drawn down from. That would be a more efficient use of those poverty dollars than having to just keep buying it on that scale.
Like health insurance, so your premiums go up for the people who can pay for it. Because there's a lot of people using the system. Does energy work that way too?
That's a great question. No, what happens with energy is that it's completely become a global commodity. And OPEC and Russia, who are the primary producers of energy still now, and of fossil fuels, anyway, their ability to make the market prices go up and down is, aside from the bad situation that happened in 2014, where literally 2 pipelines were down, and that just doesn't hardly ever, and they're working hard to never let that happen again. It is a global commodity, and this is one of those moments where I want to pull up one of the slides. Let me just find it real quick. It's amazing. So, spaghetti, huh? This is our propane distribution system. See that tanker down there? That's where most of it wants to go. It's going overseas. We actually, because of fracking, we're producing way, way more than we need in this country. And it's going on a boat over to the factories in Asia, going to Europe where they don't have their own sources of oil. This is older, there's a port there outside Philadelphia, and now there's a port up here in British Columbia. And so the whole system is working to send it to the coast to get it overseas, where it is turned into primarily plastic and for heat. So the prices that we're paying have a little bit to do with the weather here, a little bit, but mostly it has to do with how much does it cost to get it to Asia to turn it into something that gets turned around and sold back to us.
Oh my God. Oh.
Yeah. So,
Oh.
yeah, and all these pipelines.
So we should have done this at the bar.
Now there's a good idea. That's a new market for me. All right. Do you mind, Joe, running it back? I'm
Sure.
sorry. We're going to need to run it back.
Oh.
But here comes, there's.
There's more. Wait, there's more.
Oh, sorry, this is actually the other way, but,
The other way? Okay.
go back.
Sorry.
Yeah. Yep, okay, yeah.
Okay.
So there, back, one more. There we go.
Here we go.
Right, thank you. That was a test, yeah.
Yeah, right.
So, also one way to move around propane pretty easily is rail. There's a report coming out this month that came, once we were done, published in April 2020, they commissioned some folks at Michigan Tech. There's a railway program at Michigan Tech's been there for years. They are going to come out with a report this month about how rail impacts what we have access to. Because yeah, there was concern about more of those big trucks. Is that really what we want? Which is again why we want it to be stored in site as soon as we can. And then they did create what's called the Propane Commission. As you may or may not know, on your electric bill and on your natural gas bill, you pay about 5 cents per month. That money is then used to be the rebate when you upgrade your fridge or you upgrade your dryer and you get a little bit of money back. That's where that money is coming from. But propane folks didn't have access to that, so they didn't have any incentives to actually improve the efficiency or help and support them to improve the efficiency of their equipment. So they did start doing that just this year. So fundamentally, what I came away from after all of this about propane is the market corrected itself and almost doubled the amount of propane we have available than we did in 2013-14. And so we said this at almost every meeting, we don't care either way why Line 5 would shut down. That's in the courts. It has nothing to do with us. We were just looking at what would we do if, because weather could shut it down, and in Canada things happen. Canada, global thing. If it shut down, what would happen? What would happen is your prices might go up a little bit, but really the global market is setting the price anyway, and let's help you get more efficient in your home, more efficient appliances, and be ready to use the least amount of energy that you can. That's really where I came away from that. Yeah.
Is most of the propane coming from fracking?
But basically, yes. So real quick background on oil and gas. They are essentially liquefied trees and marsh plants, is what they are, that over millions of years. And there's heavy crude and lighter crude, and then there's natural gas liquids. So natural gas occurs with propane, ethane, benzene, all those enes, and they boil off. So at Rapid River, where they can take off the propane, those are big egg-shaped digesters. They're boiling things to a certain point in order to get to a specific fuel with a certain amount of carbon atoms in it, and then they can pressurize it and send it off. And so Line 5 is designed for lighter natural gas liquids. It cannot carry heavy crude, like what happened down the Kalamazoo River. Kalamazoo River was heavy crude, but that is heavy crude. Those pipes have to be built to carry that. Line 5 carries, not to say that it wouldn't cause a lot of problems if it broke, and it has, of course, broken and almost broken, and there is a 2-foot dent in it right now from the anchor that went through, and it turned out it dragged its anchor all the way to Chicago. One of the things we also found out. Bottom line is we're not going to fix that. It would potentially be unpleasant. We'd pay a little more, but yeah. And so that's what I can say about that. Any other questions about propane? All right, moving on. Oh, yeah, so let's go to the next. So then we had more people. Oh, here, there's 2 of them. Yeah, so there's 2, yeah. Yeah, this is the first one. Okay. Then we had more people talk to us, and the whole energy system. So I'm going to go through this a little faster. Basically, we have 19 different utilities in the 15 counties of the Upper Peninsula. Hey, why do we work together? Then, why are our rates so damn high? Look at that some more. And then the idea of time of use rates. So remember, we're all in this room old enough to remember when did long distance calling get cheaper? What time of day?
After 7.
After 7. I called my parents after 10 o'clock at night because when I went away to school, 10 o'clock at night is when it was cheapest to call my parents and not get charged to the roof, right? We'd be moving into that for electricity because, of course, the sun shines in the daytime but not at night, and so we're going to end up in a system, we saw that solar, where it's going to be incredibly plentiful during the daytime, might be a little harder to get at night, so the prices are probably going to end up reflecting that. On-bill financing. So utilities basically are just, they're taking money in every month from all of us. They look a lot like a bank sometimes, the way that they operate, with how they're, pulling in all this cash, and what do they do with all this cash and sending it back out. So what if you wanted to put solar panels on your house, or even if you wanted to put a new furnace, high efficient furnace, or you want to upgrade that fridge finally, or you want to upgrade your dryer, what if you could finance that on your utility bill? Holland, Michigan is already doing this right now, has been doing it for 5 years. Completely, and then it helps the customers use less energy but have a steady way, and the difference in their bill is helps pay for the equipment. So it's called pay-as-you-go. Yeah.
Do they charge interest?
No,
Nice.
because Holland is a municipal utility, like someplace else I know.
Yeah.
And as a municipal utility, they do not, and what they can use, they've also found, because this has been done in other co-ops and municipal utilities around the country, is people who have paid their bills on time for 12 months are outstanding credit risk. So if those folks are paying their bills on time, we can give them a loan and know that it's going to be repaid. There's ways to attach it to a lease and a dwelling. So this is a way to help people get that better equipment, fix that damn roof, not the roof. Although there are co-ops, the Cherryland Co-op in Traverse City has taken some of their members' funds and put it onto the roofs and to ceiling homes in their service territory. I mean, when you don't have to have when you don't have to have profit and you're just putting it all back into your community, there's a whole bunch of things that you can do that get to helping us with, because of course the cheapest electricity is the electricity you never use in the first place, right? So on-bill financing, it turns out that we don't have, in the UP, in all 15 counties, we need someone who knows how to do the auditing of this. So if you know someone who's an accountant, we need someone who knows how to do the auditing of this. But it's been, like I said, it's been working in Holland, Michigan for 5 years. And then again, energy efficiency, because it's in all of our benefit to just keep moving down how much energy we need in a home, in a building. That is going to help us with not having to buy so much coal, and it's going to help us in not having to buy so many solar panels. You make things more efficient, we just don't need that energy in the first place. Next slide. Low-income assistance programs are still a mess. Dedicated grants for the electric vehicle charging network to come. Just in the last 6 months, right, GM not making internal combustion engines anymore. Ford has come out with an electric truck. You know, these things, this is happening. And so, and what they're doing downstate is a one-third, one-third, one-third. One-third state, one-third utility, one-third local partner to pay for them. What they're willing to do for the UP is half and half. So, just getting people organized, broadband, got to have all these connections so that everybody can talk to each other to understand, you know, that piece. And then there's a lot of jobs. These are jobs that are going to be right here, fixing people's homes, getting all the wires straightened out, putting up the panels, all that stuff. Let's get that going. And then smart meters is that things talking to each other, and then battery storage, primarily at the commercial scale, but it is still too expensive to really do it in your house unless you really just want to have it. We're still kind of there on that, on the, you know, how things get better, but on the commercial side, things are better.
Question. You said downstate they were doing one-third, 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 fed, state?
No, state, local, and utility.
State, local, and
utility.
Utility. And then up here, we were going to do half and half. Who's that?
Well, it depends. So then it gets into all this wheeling and dealing. This is what I get paid to do right now, is help set those up. And it's you know, what a bigger something help subsidize one downtown. There's ways to use, because
so it's the utility and
the state, and then the local partner in some fashion with the utility.
Okay.
We can go into EVs. It's 7:05. But next slide. Yeah. So this was the end. She's my favorite lady here. I have not had a landline in 10 years. I have not had a landline since I bought my first house in 2011.
I can't give mine up. You know, not if you want to call me.
Right. So the question is, you know, and then, you know, there are, pick on my fellow commissioners. I have commissioners who are, you know, 1 or 2 years out of college. They don't do paper. Like, they just don't. Like, it is on here or it doesn't exist, right? Like, you can't pay them, right? You have to pay them with, you know, we go out to the bar, I'm sending him money on my, thanks for covering that, I'm sending you money on the phone, right? So this thing, smartphone, they came out 14 years ago. 2007 was the first, with a phone where you could actually use it as a computer and not just a phone. The last internal combustion engine is going to be sold 14 years from now, 2035. And that's how, again, how fast. We got rid of coal in 5 years. potentially 14 years to get rid of internal combustion engine cars. Not that they're going to stop selling them, they're going to be around, of course. Right? Yeah.
I will add, I have that phone in my house. It looks just like it. And when nothing else works, guess where I am?
Oh, yeah. And so, yeah, it's such the case of, up here, and then of course, right where we are, the definition of the end of the line. And so, sort of to your point, Susan, a lot of this stuff that I was showing you, is the big scale. Because honestly, when you get to that big scale, it's cheap. It is super cheap. I mean, we're talking $1 a watt. It's cheap. But where? And where are we going to put that versus what can we put on homes? And some homes are in the woods, and my house has a south-facing roof. A lot of houses don't have south-facing roofs. So, those coal plants were on the lake because they had to be on the lake to get the stuff from Wyoming to get here so that we, right, so that we didn't just keep cutting down trees, right? It had to be on the lake. Well, solar has to be where there's sun. Now, this is where, scroll through a couple.
Advance.
Yeah. There's all our utilities. So there's our solar potential. So here's Alaska. That's Germany. Same color as Alaska, right? Because Germany's actually Spain. Look at that. Northern Spain is the same as Michigan. So does it work up here? Absolutely. Totally, utterly, absolutely will work up here. In the right place, where somebody actually wants it, with the right connections. But that would be true of any technology. That's not to say that solar is any different than anything else, but will it work? Absolutely. And actually, because of the snow, it actually reflects off the snow. Light bounces off the snow, works really well. Better, actually, in some of these places where they just get so damn hot they start to melt, right? They can't actually work. The cold is to our advantage to some extent. Yeah.
As long as they don't cut down all the trees.
Right. Right, where you want it. So, if you keep going, I'm going to get to something. Yep, right here. So, potential solar development on brownfields. Land that's already been used. So, mining sites, right? Other industrial potential old uses. The power plant that might have just been torn down. Actually, I have no idea what's going on over there. It would be great to have it be a solar field, but there may be other uses. I don't know. That might not be the best use of the property. But you do want to be, those purple lines are the big industrial, 138 kilowatt, the big giant transmission lines. It is to your benefit to be closer to a transmission line because there's line loss. I mean, you can adapt to line loss, but there's line loss. The further away you are, the more expensive it is. But yeah, people are working on figuring that out. Yeah.
So I didn't see, was the environmental impact of the different energy sources part of the task force at all?
Yeah,
I mean, or was it purely monetary?
no, environmental soundness was one of our criteria. And there are people working on recycling all the parts of a wind turbine. That is happening. It's not that you will see there's also some that have gone into landfills. Just like some of our plastics have gone into landfills and some of our glass has gone into landfills. But yes, they're working on trying to make that better. There's very clear intention around understanding that we need to figure that out. But the thing is, and then solar panels, glass, it's sand. It's sand and a little bit of a few other chemicals. And then there's wires on the back. They're playing around with different kind of funky things, and there's this thing called pescabike, Pescadin, which is they're gonna literally, they wanna paint on windows, which would also generate power. They can do it in small scales, but figuring out how to do like a whole high-rise, we're not there yet, but they can make it work in a lab, but it's like, how do we get it out of the lab into the real world? And there are a bunch of people working on that at Tech. Oh, and then another amazing thing, this has been in the news, is Mather Mine.
Yeah.
And using the water in Mather Mine to be a battery and do basically a giant geothermal, like gigawatts of geothermal, which is more than the whole UP needs, as a backup. If we can figure out, like again, it works in theory in the lab, and Nagani is actually working with some people to let them actually figure it out in Mather. So that's a resource that we have. Something else I was going to say. So, so who owns this? Is the other part of the question. And that's a huge fight because, yes, you build it at scale, it's generally pretty cheap, but some corporation's probably going to own it unless it's a co-op, which then a co-op is owned by its members. That could be run in a different way. Then there's something called community solar, which is when people, maybe even inside of a larger utility, say, okay, we're going to do our neighborhood because Sally's house has great, has the perfect location. We can run wires to Sally's house. Ann Arbor, just 2 weeks ago, said, DTE, you're not moving fast enough for us, given all the climate change problems. We're going to put in geothermal, and we're going to put in solar on every single building we can. We're going to take the money that we would spend, we're going to put solar on everything we can, and then you're going to have to buy it from us because of a loophole in Michigan law. So that's playing out right now. That was literally like, that was a huge deal. We unfortunately can't do that here in Marquette because we already have a municipal utility. But when you're a municipality and you're dealing with a corporation, because of this law that we have called the Foot Act, which is also hilarious, there is a loophole in that law saying that they could put solar on everything and make DTE buy it. Because, or basically, so, because right now there's a cap on how much solar, right? And there's a law, actually, and Markkinen in the Western UP is actually helping with this. It is truly bipartisan, it's Republican and Democrat. And it was capped at 1%. UPCO is already going past that because its rates are so high. So it's also the case, like you were saying, if you have the money and you're an UPCO customer, put on solar tomorrow. It makes no sense financially, none, for you to keep paying UPCO rates. It is cheaper to just put solar on your house. Like that, clearly, you'll be paid back in 5 years. 5. And then it's free. Because the panels really do last 20, 25 years. You will have 20 years of not having to pay electric bills.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
But
amazing.
that's only with UPCO
Well, so
right now.
so that, okay, we'll talk about that offline. There's other concerns. So the who decides and the resource flows. Each utility, each of those 19 utilities has a slightly different situation, which is why we want folks to coordinate. It would be really better off for all of us if they would figure out how to do some of this together rather than staying in islands.
Resolve it all.
What are the other munis in the UP?
So let's go back.
Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, the question was what are the other municipal utilities?
We're going
There's
back.
a list. If you keep going, there.
Oh, quite a few.
So most of those 12 do not generate their own power. They are buying it from Wisconsin, from a co-op though, so they're not paying profit. It's a company called Wisconsin Public Power. I don't know what the I stands for, WPPI. They have helped, Lance has a community solar program. Lance put solar on the wastewater treatment plant. And now things have kind of stopped, unfortunately, for complicated political and business resource reasons. But again, the potential is all there to do the things that I'm talking about today.
Jen, how are the solar systems working on Wright Street? You know,
Yeah,
you could buy one, and you know, how does that work, and are they working, and should we all have one?
We have 4.
Yeah.
they set those up so that you would not save any money.
Oh, nice.
Because,
But you're saving carbon getting burned, gas getting burned to produce your heat. So. produce your
so
electricity.
the question of whether a utility has to sell more to make more money, to have more money available to do what they need to do, or does a utility do other things, on-bill financing, maybe charge a little bit of interest on the on-bill financing to people that might qualify for different reasons? Like, it's stepping back and saying, is this the way, we did it for 100 years, it got us to this, we have amazing things in our country, but oops, global warming, and oops, there's a lot of people who can't pay their bills. Our utility bills,
Right.
yeah, I'm someone who approved a water rate increase, I know. So it was done as a way to see how does this work and for their workers to understand how solar works in their system. It is a solar project in a valley. Also, I want to point out that it is in a valley.
Right.
So there may, encouraging them, we just had an election yesterday for the Board of Light and Power, encouraging them to think maybe there's some other ways that we could be doing things. We have that ability within this. So do when I went to work for this company, one of the things that my boss, anyway, I do pay for them now because we want to be supporting this. So that is it's actually part of my, I get reimbursed a little bit for it. It's actually considered a business expense. But it was really, because they're operating from the place of, if we don't sell more electricity next year than we did this year, how are we going to have enough money to do what we need to do, right? And so it's a lot, and they're engineers and they're used to thinking about watts and keeping people safe on the line, on their linemen. They're doing big complicated things. These are like business school problems almost, and not engineering problems. That's something I've really come to understand as I try to explain this to people. A lot of this is about like, how do you keep the money going when, with a solar panel, right, you put it up and you don't have to have a monthly bill anymore.
Right.
That's the whole point. So how do you do that? So I kind of answered your question, I think.
Yes, sure.